Hello and welcome everyone to CyVerse's fall webinars for 2024. I'm Tina Lee, CyVerse's User Engagement Officer. Today's webinar is on getting started troubleshooting your analyses, and it's the final segment of our Getting Started series for this semester, where we focus on specific features in CyVerse to help you do your open science. Before I turn the webinar over to my colleagues Michele and Sarah Roberts, please open the Zoom chat window and type any questions there for them to answer after the presentation. As always, we record our webinars and I'll post these on our CyVerse YouTube channel as well as on our website for you to review at any time. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague Michele Cosi. Michele is a research data scientist with a background in plant genomics and is a veteran trainer and presenter of CyVerse webinars and Data Science Institute workshops. Assisting Michele is Sarah Roberts, CyVerse's Core Software Team lead, and she'll provide her deep expertise in everything from programming APIs to improvements to the user experience for our discovery environment platform. When the rest of us are stumped, it's Sarah we turn to for her skill and knowledge at troubleshooting. So welcome, Sarah, and welcome, Michele.
Thank you for a candid introduction, Tina. All right, everyone, thank you for being here today. And today will be all about troubleshooting your analysis. And by all means, these are things that when you reach out to us, when you reach out with that I need more help button, these are things that we look at that may well stop you from running the analysis that you are running, essentially. Without further ado, I like to switch tabs and go right into Discovery Environment, where I'm going to cover, I think, 4 or 5 points that are worth looking at when you are stuck behind a specific problem. The first thing that I would like to cover is the loading bars. When you are launching an application, you might have an app stuck in 3 points, 20%, 60%, and 75%. I'm going to launch an application to show you exactly what I'm talking about. And for this, I am going to launch the JupyterLab Bioscience. So I can click on the application itself. And for this specific showcase, I will not require maximums or minimums, and therefore I'm just going to go ahead and launch my analysis. I'm going to click to go to analysis, and oh, it's already gone to 60%. Some of you might have seen an app getting all the way up to 20%, where it says that it is trying to find the resources on the host. Now, what that means is, well, throughout our computers at CyVerse, throughout our cloud computing platform, we do have a, well, limited resource allocation. And therefore, if a lot of other people are running applications and you have asked for 64 cores and 256 RAM, maybe unlikely you are going to receive the allocations right there and then, and therefore you will have to wait for your turn. This goes into the point that maybe you should know a little bit about your own analysis. If you are using a bacterial DNA and try to make a couple of alignments, maybe you shouldn't select 256 gigabytes of RAM, and maybe you should actually just stick to 16, 8. Also, the amount of cores, 32 cores for a small alignment, will not be necessary. And therefore, for you to get a little bit ahead of the queue, maybe ask for less. But if you really cannot, just simply be patient. After the 20%, let me share again. After the 20%, let me run another analysis. Here, let me launch another application so you can see the little, I'm going to launch a JupyterLab Data Science now. After the 20%, the loading bar will move to 60%. Let's see when this gets started. Go to Analysis. So as you can see here, 20% is trying to find a host. This shouldn't take long since we only asked for 4 cores. Now it's moved to 60, where it is downloading the container images. Now, all of our tools are containers of sorts, and therefore, what is happening is that Vice is reaching out to whatever registry you have your tool in, and it's actually downloading the container itself, the image itself. And when the image is fully downloaded, then it will move from a 60% to either a 75% or 100%. 100% simply means that your application is now ready to use. 60% is a delicate step because there is a couple of things that you may want to keep in mind. First is, well, maybe this specific container image is very large. Usually containers are asked to be between 500 megabytes to, let's say, 2.5 gigabytes. And however, if this is a really large image with a lot of tools inside, it can grow a little bit larger. And if this is a container that you have developed, that you have ingested, it's going to take a little bit longer to download. So just be patient on that 60% step. Not only we are downloading images at the 60% step, but there's also another step that happens behind the scenes. And for that, I'm going to touch on Sarah to talk a little bit about what other things are happening at the 60% step. Sarah, what can you tell us about what happens at the 60% step?
Sure, that's 60% step. In addition to downloading the container image, we also go into the container and initialize a few things. The first thing we initialize is the connection to the data store. And once that is available, we create some symbolic links between the home directory in the container and the directory where the data store is mounted. And that usually doesn't take very long, but if any of those steps encounter any hurdles, then sometimes it'll get stuck there.
Thank you for that, Sarah. And by all means, creating symbolic links and mounting this driver between the discovery environment and the application itself can fail. And sometimes when it fails, well, the only thing you're stuck with is to actually turning it off and turning it back on again. And there's nothing else that you can do at this specific case. If something is not working at 60%, turning it off and on will actually try to fix the issue. One thing that I do need to mention, let me share my screen again, is that a lot of our applications are already cached, meaning that they are already in the system, quicker to be launched. However, if you are bringing your own tool, if you are bringing your own container image, it is likely that it's going to take a little bit more than the time that is required for JupyterLab Bioscience to launch, for example. And lastly, now I'm going to stop my share again. There is a likelihood that your tool will get stuck at 75%. Now, what does that mean? One, it means that the resources allocated have been granted to your launched application. Second, the resources, the container itself has been downloaded and it's ready to go. However, this is where CyVerse actually gives you a little bit more information on what's going on at the 75% step. However, the DE is having issues contacting your tool, your application. And what does that mean? There is a couple of things that might get stuck, essentially. And one of those things are ports. I know, for example, I'm going to share my screen again. I know, for example, that Jupyter Labs run on port 8888. And if you don't know what a port is, well, ports are kind of like doors that allow for specific applications to launch from a terminal, for example, onto your web browser in order for Jupyter Lab to display everything that Jupyter Lab has to offer, or for R to display its IDE. Ports also connect to outside of the internet, outside to the internet, to retrieve information outside your computer. And therefore, ports are really important, and it's a concept for you. It's a concept needed for you to grasp. Now, ports is something that you set up once you are ingesting a specific container, a specific tool. For example, in this Jupyter Lab Bioscience, if I were to look at my own tools, or let's look at data science, let's see if we can find, there we go, I'm using this specific version. So let's look at it a second. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to look for details. It does not show right here. So I'm going to pick a tool that I am currently working on. I'm going to go ahead and click Edit to show you a little bit of the ingestion tool in case you've never seen it. The ingestion tool allows you to add a name, a description, a specific version to a tool before it becomes an app, and you can also decide whether it is executable or interactive. This specific expandable gives CyVerse the ability to look for your tool. This is where you add the repository that that the tool currently lives on. Currently, the specific app runs on the Harbor CyVerse private repository, but this can definitely be Docker Hub, and then you add the tag down here. What I want you to keep in mind is the things that are below. We were just talking about ports, and ports are important. And this specific port field is a little bit tricky. I have now selected 8888, but if I were to scroll up, look at that port change as I scroll up and as I scroll down. So this is not really good, in a sense that perhaps keep in mind to click out of this before you scroll up or down, such that that port number does not change. It has happened to me multiple times in the past where I'm integrating a Jupyter Lab or an RStudio, and I'm all happy-dappy, and I launch my application, but it just gets stuck at 75%. So I have to track back to the tool ingester, and I need to make sure that that port number is correct. Now, just make sure that once you click on that field, you write down the port number and don't scroll up or down. So I'm gonna fix this to 88, click out, and then I'm able to scroll up or down. Here, I also want for you to know, well, if you know what you're doing, you can type here a specific alternative entry point. Just know that if you have added a specific alternative entry point to your container, well, the container may fail. So just be careful with the entry point command. Lastly, I want you to look at the UID. UID 1000, user ID 1000 means that I, the user, want to connect to my tool. Now, the user ID 1000 means that the user ID 1000 is you, so the user 1000 is trying to connect to the tool. But if you wanted to connect as a root, the UID should be 0. So just be careful with what number you type in your user ID. Very few apps have issues with working directory, and the working directory is where you are going to land as soon as you open your tool. So as soon as you launch your application. So unlikely your application is going to fail if you have added the working directory wrong. Lastly, the injection tool is also where you can add restrictions, but in this specific case, we do not change any of the restrictions here. With that said, the first things that we do is we look at is the ingestion of your tool correct? These are things that we can also change for you, but always double check with yourself. Am I writing the correct numbers or the correct entry points or the correct container image address here? So one thing to definitely keep in mind. Before moving on, there is another thing that I do need to add is when you are writing a specific Docker file, always make sure to expose the correct port. Otherwise, if you're exposing the wrong port, well, then your tool or the DE will not be able to connect to the tool itself. Okay, now I'm going to switch it up a little bit, because let's assume that your application is able to start and you are able to connect to the application, you have the right port and whatnot, but things go wrong. And where can we check if things go wrong? Well, if you go to Analysis, there is a button for you to know, and this little button right here called View Logs. Now, View Logs is extremely powerful because it allows you to actually see, albeit not very clearly, things that may be going wrong with your current run. I can scroll all the way down, and usually if something is going wrong, it will tell me, warning, I'm not able to access something, or error, there is something that perhaps I cannot communicate with the data store, and it's going to say error, remote IO. And sometimes you get stuck. So you want to come here to look at the logs. This is something you can refresh over time. It's going to give you a little bit more information, or you can tap onto this follow logs button, which will refresh the logs over time as things get refreshed. But what if, there we go, it's getting refreshed. So I can go ahead and scroll all the way back down to my latest call, and it seems like everything is okay. So nothing is wrong with the current run. I'm going to press X. Logs, View Logs, is a button that only appears with the running interactive applications. What if I'm running an executive application? An executive application will not have the View Logs button. If I want to know more about what is going on, I will have to view the logs at the end of a specific run. And to view the logs of an executive app, I'm going to look at Guide Maker. I can either click the Go to Output folder, or I can go to Data and look at my standard output folder, which is Analysis. For simplifying things, I'm just going to click on the Output folder. For people that do not know, Guide Maker is a tool to create CRISPR guides, essentially. But by all means, once an executive app is finished running, whether it's successful or whether it has failed, you can look at, one, the outputs that you are expecting, or two, the logs that are created from CyVerse and the application itself. Outside of the GuideMaker output, I have a GuideMaker.log, which is essentially a text file with information that it's the sort of information that you see once you start an application for the terminal. It tells you what is running, it tells you who is running it, It tells you essentially all of the information that you're expecting as a standard output to your terminal. Normally, if you're having an issue, the last line will say error, you're out of RAM, for example, or error, your GFF file is incorrect. So that's something, for the first example that I've given is maybe you need to give more RAM to your application run. Or the second example regarding the input file is, well, maybe your GFF file is wrong and you need to re-download it, or maybe modify it such that the headers are correct. Let's look at the log folder itself, because this has a lot more information, not only about the application that you are running, but also about the machinery that is running through CyVerse. Here you have your standard, where is it? Your standard, oh my gosh, the Condor standard route.
Condor.
No, the Condor standard is not the Condor standard route. Which one was it?
The Condor standard out is the one from the app itself. It's usually a standard output from the app.
Thank you. But let's look at the standard error. And the standard error gives you essentially the same information, albeit a little bit more verbose, albeit a little bit more in depth. And likely sometimes this is a really big file with everything that happens from the beginning all the way to the end, but this is very similar to what you just saw on the log from the app. This seems to be quite empty, so I'm not really sure if it's worth looking at. Perhaps we have had no error, so therefore everything is good. But here there is also some information about the Docker Compose. And Docker Compose is a tool that allows for what's the right word? Coordination within a specific deployment. If you're running multiple tools in Kubernetes, require Docker Compose in order to make sure that all of the containers within this run are running as expected. There also is a Docker Compose YAML in case you want to look at the Docker Compose file itself. This is auto-generated, I believe. And then things like job parameters and summary. These are things that you have selected once you were creating your run. There also is download inputs and as in standard error and standard output, because sure, CyVerse is a computer, or it's made to look like a single computer, but it is not. It is not as simple as that. And therefore, when data is moved around from the data store to the running application node, this is an actual download that happens from within CyVerse itself. And it is not unlikely that perhaps the transfer fails, and therefore sometimes you might just need to restart it. Sometimes you might need to specify the name of the path and the name of the specific file better. Maybe you made a mistake there. So there is different things that may change. And just so you know, Condor is not the animal right now. What is Condor, Sarah?
Condor refers to a software application called HT Condor, or High Throughput Condor. It's developed by the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and it basically schedules jobs to run on other computers. So we submit a job to Condor, it finds a node that's available to run the job, transfers all of the files necessary to run the job to that node, and then launches it. And for a piece of trivia, the Condor was famously, or Condor, HT Condor, was famously used by the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence project to scavenge CPU cycles off of unused computers. And because a condor is a scavenger bird, that's the reference. It's scavenging CPU cycles.
I have now more information that I ever dreamt of, and this is fantastic. That's insane. Okay, yeah, okay, now I understand the name behind Condor. It's always been in the back of my mind. Why is it called Condor? All right. So yes, by all means, let's assume that your application runs and then it fails. The first thing that we look at is your ingestion tool correct? What are the logs looking like? These are things that we look at. There is nothing that stops you from looking at the same issues or the same files that we are looking at. Let's say that it's more we create more accustomed to it, looking at the various files. So for us, it's normal. For a first timer or for a third timer, this is an exercise that requires a little bit more time and maybe a little bit more pushing to go looking at logs. They're not scary. Okay, the next point that I wanted to make is, let's say that in this specific case, guide maker is taking just a little bit too long. Guide maker shouldn't take long because, well, in this specific run that we did run, we were working on a bacterial DNA, and therefore, well, bacterial RNAs are very small. We're trying to create a guide for it. But let's say that it's running for the past 3 days. What's going on? Well, sadly speaking, sometimes things just don't work. And in this specific case, what was going on is that data wasn't being transferred from the application node back to the discovery environment. And sadly, there's nothing for you to do apart from reaching out to us. And probably Sarah is going to see that the node is trying to transfer the files, but it's just failing. What Sarah is going to do is that is going to essentially bundle up your files, move them to your folders, and we'll ask you to turn off the application manually. Simply speaking, there is no real fix for this, and it just requires a little bit of time for things to really move from sometimes. So this is the only real issues that you can't look into apart from reaching out to us. Everything else, the logs are there for you, and 20, 60, 75% now make a little bit more sense. With that in mind, also turning it off and turning it on might also be a fix. That's always the first thing we tell people. Have you tried turning it off and on? And there is one last thing that I need for you to know. Okay, so applications, we have something called string tie, and this is a good example of it because string tie is hosted on CyVerse. Let's see if we can find it. It's hosted on CyVerse with version 1.3.3 or string tie 2.0. Sometimes back, a collaborator was trying to use string tie, and if you know about string tie, the output of string tie is ingested. It is then ingested from a tool called ballgown. Ballgown wasn't able to ingest the outputs of 1.3.3. Simply speaking, the user was using an older version of string tie. The latest version is 2.2.0, and look at the manual. If the manual shows you that the latest release is 2.2.0 and version 1.3.3 has some issues with ballgown, maybe you just need to go ahead and use a different version of string tie. This has happened multiple times where, well, you have the outputs of a specific tool, but they're not able to be ingested in the next tool. Just look at your versions. And by all means, read the manual. And I'm sorry I'm putting it so dramatically right here, but so much time could have been saved in the past if the user would have gone back to string tie and read the manual of how it actually works. A lot of questions that come through to us are, what number should I put for the isoform abundance? Likely what's behind the screen on the other side is not a biologist. It's not somebody that's ever used string tie or knows about RNA. Likely it's somebody like Sarah or Tina that is going to go and type in string tie manual and read what this default is. And the answer that you're going to get, oh, just keep it at 0.01. That's the default. So therefore, by all means, step number 0 will always be read the manuals. They will save time for you, they will save time for us, and it will just make sure that the overall experience that you're having with CyVerse and the applications that we host are exactly what should be. With that, I think I have hit all of the points that I wanted to make. And therefore, I would like to thank Sarah for her input today. And Tina, thank you for hosting. If there are any questions, I am happy to answer them. If you brought your data, also I'm happy to accommodate. Hi, Jose.
Hi, I'm really sorry I wasn't able to be here from the start. I'm sure some of the questions I have probably got addressed then. But basically, I'm kind of here on behalf of a colleague who uses CyVerse. And the problem that they have is they use a certain program that there is a container for, but it's not the version that he uses. And so he tried to create his own kind of environment and then like install the packages from scratch. But like he has to do that every single time. And so it's just like really just takes a long time. I'm guessing that turning it into some kind of Docker image would be the way to go to load it all in one from the
Yeah,
get-go without him having to, start a session, then install it, then wait, then.
that's absolutely the way to go. And I am going to share my screen very quickly. Is this going to be a biology sort of application?
Yeah, it is. It's single cell research.
Okay, so I would like to invite you to look at, and I'm going to share this with you. We have a number of Docker files. Where is the chat? We have a number of Docker files that already exist, and these go all the way from JupyterLab PyTorch to RStudio, and I mostly maintain JupyterLab Data Science. And if you look at, for example, the bioscience, there is a Docker file that already exists. My suggestion would be to take one of these Docker files,
Uh-huh.
take one of these Docker files and all of the other required tools, and from here, build the environment from within Docker. And then upload it into CyVerse. That will save your friend a lot of time every single time it launches. You don't have to recreate the environment.
He
Um,
can specify any version of, like, let's just say RStudio that he wants and version of his, software that everything can be specified.
is this the person that needs CURAT?
Yes.
Okay, I'm working on it, and let
Oh,
me be extremely specific here. Um, what I am building is
okay.
it's based on a JupyterLab image
Okay.
that had RStudio fixed at 3 point something, and it was extremely hard to backward engineer the image such that I was able to install RStudio 4.4.1. The thing is, as soon as I'm done here, I should be able to go back and push my changes and ideally have it available. But do know that I am working on it. And actually, this is the Docker file that I am working on. Obviously, my changes haven't been pushed on just yet, but I understand what the problem is. Just
Okay.
if you want to tackle it, oh, sorry, my cat
Oh
just.
no. I'm not too familiar with Docker just yet. I'm
Okay.
just starting to learn more about it, and virtualization, containerization. I'm still very new to it. So I'll definitely review all the files after and try to see, like, maybe I'll compare it to the one that you first showed me, basically your starter one, and kind of see the differences and kind of learn a little that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
By all means, good luck. Docker is a black hole.
Yeah.
There is a lot that can get lost in translation. Um, I suggest trying to install things one by one first and see what the issues may arise. The problem that I am currently running in is Tidyverse. That was one of the packages that he actually asked for me to install.
Yeah.
Tidyverse is simply not cooperating.
Mm.
It's telling me that there is a pathing problem, meaning that it cannot find specific libraries. But I know, I know for a fact that I'm installing those libraries, and it's just trying things out until Tidyverse is able to read those libraries. So this is something that I've been working on for a couple of weeks. Feel free to try it. Otherwise, I should be able to send back your collaborator a reply, hopefully soon, regarding
Okay.
things being done.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely let them know. And yeah, I appreciate it. Um, let's see, what was I gonna ask you? Um, there's another tool within one of the environments called RENV. And so I was kind of looking into that, but it sounds like that's not really, like, that still does the downloading
Yes.
before it's actually built, right? Or after it's built. And we want to do it as it's being built with Docker and stuff.
Yeah, the only way to get around complete environments is creating a Docker container or a virtual machine image, which we
Okay.
do not host anymore. Um, and
Okay.
therefore, going forward, if you are familiar with Jetstream 2, which is an online platform that hosts virtual machines, you can go ahead with that. Jetstream 2 is able to host saved states. If not, if you keep on wanting to use CyVerse, Docker containers are the only way to go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just wait to see how it goes. And so basically, once you do your final push next week or whatever, we'll be able to select it as like a, if we just type Seurat, and then we'll see the
Uh,
two.
it will be within. I've meant to give more information to him and to you at this point, but what I'm trying to do now is that I'm trying to containerize. Sorry, trying to containerize a lot of the tools that people are asking into a single container.
Oh, okay,
That
yeah.
is the
So
Jupyter Lab
parse.
Bioscience.
Yeah.
Because simply speaking, between you and
This will
I,
come up a lot. Yeah, this will come up.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. There is a lot of people that are asking for the same thing. So, and
Okay.
if you know biology, sorry, if you know a little bit of bioinformatics, there is tools that go from R, there's tools that switch to Python right after. So I was thinking if we just move them all together, people will have a solid uh, digital workbench that they can work
That
on.
sounds good. Yeah, that sounds really good.
Michele, I know you and Sarah have another appointment, so
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you, Jose. We need to tie up a little bit here, so thanks for joining us for today's troubleshooting. And Jose, I'm sure you'll benefit from our future container camp offering, right? So anyway, please do join us next week, November 22nd, same time, 10 a.m. MST. Enrique Noriega of the Data Science Institute will do a webinar on empowering biomedical literature understanding with LLMs and HPC. Enrique will show people how to use large language models and high performance computing to power the analysis behind tackling all the updates in biomedical literature, so text analysis and stuff, so that mere mortal humans don't have to spend all their time basically reading. They can get the LLMs and HPC powered LLMs to read for them. Anyway, thank you. Please join us next week and we'll see everybody then. Bye now.
Thank you.